Sorting Pokemon cards is one of the most challenging parts of running a Pokemon card business, or you might be a collector that just has Pokemon cards and you want to know how to sort them better. Well, in this video, I'm going to break down my 5-step process of how I receive cards all the way to ship cards, and if you stay to the end, I'm going to show you the entire background of how I actually store these cards on those shelves right there. So in this video, we're going to go over my 5-step framework. We're going to go over a few tips on how I sort, condition my cards, and how I list them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into this. Now, I've been selling Pokemon cards for a while, and if you've ever sold on TCG Player, you can realize that things start to go missing. This is because I just suck at inventory management. It's true. Stuff will sell, maybe I'll put piles everywhere, things will just get out of order, I'll get lazy, maybe you've experienced the same, and all of a sudden, when you have thousands of cards in inventory, you don't know where anything is, and a card sells, and then you're like, oh, I can't fulfill this order because I don't know where the card is. Well, hopefully some of the information in this teaches all of us how to be better at inventory management and avoid some of that stuff. So when you're selling these Pokemon cards, it's important to break this down into a framework. And depending on how you're selling Pokemon cards or other card games, your framework for shipping, receiving, listing, conditioning, all of those things are going to be completely different. For example, there's other channels out there like Chase from TCG Bolt Kings that has an entire framework on category sorts and listings and different types of alphabetical sorts for every single game that he sells. If you don't know his channel, I'd suggest you check it out. But for this video, we're going to focus strictly on Pokemon cards. Now, for this video, there's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to reference. If you check out the description, there's going to be links to the BCW Supplies that I use and all of the supplies lists that I have. But without further ado, here's the 5 steps. So step number 1 is going to be receive. You can't actually sort Pokemon cards if you don't have any. Now, if you're doing this with a personal collection, you're just going to take the stuff that you already have, and it's probably less important about what you are doing with them, and it kind of depends on what you'd like to do. If you want to just sort them by type or rarity or anything like that, that is perfectly acceptable. Now, if you're running a business, it's a lot more important to be very diligent about how you're doing this and maximize for efficiency when you're sorting cards, because sorting Pokemon cards is probably one of the most tedious things that I do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to this business. I did order a card sorter, but it's not here yet, so for now we're stuck doing it the manual way, but luckily there's been some tools that I've introduced that have kind of helped me with this process. So first step is receive. Whether we're buying inventory or we have inventory sitting around, you're going to want to have a centralized location in your little workspace area for holding all your received inventory and stuff that you know is not listed. That way it all stays separate from the rest of your inventory. You're not confusing what's what, and you know exactly what you need to tackle on the weekends or after work when it's time to list all those cards, get them sorted and received. So the next step that I do is set sort. So once I have all of those inventory and stuff, I put it into Wave Financial Accounting, which is the software in the description that's free to use for tracking inventory, revenue, and expenses. And I'll make sure that every time I have cost of goods sold, I'm logging the inventory in there. So that completes receive. Now the next step is going to be set sort. So if you have like a 5,000 count box of cards, you might be thinking, what's the best way to sort things? Well, on TCG Player, when you sell a card or eBay, anything like that, it's going to say the set that the card is from. And for TCG Player, it's one of the first things on the invoice. So for me, it's easiest to start at the top and go from the set that the card is from. So for example, if we sold a Gardevoir EX from Scarlet and Violet, I would want to make sure that I have a BCW 5,000 count box that has a row that says Scarlet and Violet. That way, when I sell the Gardevoir EX, I go, okay, it's in the Scarlet and Violet row in this box. So then we can go over to the Scarlet and Violet row, pick the card out, and there you go. So sorting by set really helps to identify the sets that all these Pokemon cards come through. There's hundreds of Pokemon cards out there and tons of different sets. So if we were just alphabetically sorting our entire inventory, it wouldn't really be as granular as we'd like it to be to make sure that we know where stuff is when we're going to go pick it. So that brings us to the next step. Once everything has been set, sorted, and usually what I do with this is I'll take all of the inventory, I'll sit down with the BCW modular sorting tray, and I'll place the cards into little slots and distinguish by set. So if a card goes to Shining Legends, I'll put it with the Shining Legend cards. If a card goes for Scarlet and Violet, I'll put it with the Scarlet and Violet cards. Then after I've done that, I'll take all of those stacks, I'll put them to the side, and then I'll use the same BCW tray with index cards that have the letter of the alphabet on them and alphabetically sort the cards. For me, this is really helpful for being able to find cards in the exact location where I want them right after I have gone through and sorted the cards by set. This is also super helpful for TCG Player Direct, as they use Alphabetical for categorizing the inventory when you use pull sheets and receiving sheets. So once you've actually done that, you want to alphabetically sort all of the cards. Now this can be very tedious, but the BCW modular tray, when you use the BCW tall dividers and you Sharpie the letter of the alphabet on the card, it becomes a lot faster than if you were just using a table. But if you don't have the BCW supplies, using a table or something is something that I've done for a long time, and it works just fine. And if you have a lot less cards, it's a lot less effort. So simply put some stacks of cards on your tables, make sure that it's going from A to Z, and then take the cards and manually move the cards one by one. Okay, this is an Aegislash, I'm going to put that in A. Okay, this is a Substrika, I'm going to put that in Z. Okay, this is a Durant, I'm going to put that in D. And then once you have all that done, now you have all of your cards sorted by the alphabet and by set. So once I've done this, usually I'd go one set at a time. I will then go to TCG Player, and since I'm a level 4 seller, I use the pricing tab to list out all the inventory. Now, here's the thing. In the past, I used to sort by alphabetically by the first letter of the alphabet, and then take all of the cards from the A stack, for example, and then resort based on the second letter of the alphabet. I actually no longer do that, and because of the TCG Player level 4 pricing tab, I can actually just go in, select the set I want, select the conditions I want, and then export the list in Excel in alphabetical order. Now, this is super helpful because it removes that second sort, and we're actually going to be sorting and conditioning in the same step here. Now, basically what I'll do is I have all of the A cards, for example, from whatever set it is we're looking at. And in Excel, it's going to be automatically alphabetizing by second letter, third letter, all that stuff to make sure it's in order of what it should be. And when I'm going through and adding the quantity and adjusting the prices of the cards I have, I'll just take all of the cards that I had in that A stack, I'll lay them out all on a table and match the Excel list. So if I know that Aegislash is one of the cards and the next card is going to be a card that's like, I don't know, A second letter is H or something, then you would go and look at the TCG Player Excel list, and then you would map it to whatever the Excel list says. That way you're not sitting there and using the brain power to think, okay, the A cards go here, the AE cards go here, the AH cards go here, the A whatever goes here, and instead you're just matching to Excel, you're adjusting the prices and all that at the same time. Now this is where you combine the other step into it. This is where I like to condition cards at the same time. Depending on the method you might use, conditioning could be an entire step in itself. For me, what I'll do is when I'm listing all the cards on the Excel sheet, I'll say these are my near mint cards, I'll adjust the quantity, and as I'm looking at that stack of the individual card, for example, let's use Aegislash, I'll take all the near mint ones and I'll say, okay, these ones are near mint, I'll add the quantity, adjust the price, and then I'll say, okay, these are all the lightly played ones, add the quantity, adjust the price. For me, I stopped selling moderately played and heavily played cards, so for those, I actually just put them to the side and don't even list them, which you could argue it could be done earlier, but this is the process that works for me, and I found it pretty helpful. It allows me to just list everything all at once and get all the conditioning and the sorting done in just one step instead. Then what I'll do once everything is listed and good to go, I'll make sure that when I am going by the alphabet, I use those BCW tall dividers and an index card to distinguish the letter of the alphabet that those cards go with. So for example, if I just listed all the A cards, I'll take an A divider and then I'll put the cards on top of the divider, signifying that this is the A stack. Then when I list all the B cards, I'll take the B divider, put that on the back of the A cards, and then I'll put all the B cards on it. And then you're kind of making like a multiple layered sandwich almost, and once all of that is done, I will move them into the BCW boxes, and that will be where the cards then get stored. So the last step in this process is going to be ship the cards. Once you start to get into this habit of doing all this, you're going to realize that now it's a lot easier to find your cards. If instead you were just using random Elite Trainer boxes or random boxes with no sorting, it would take tons and tons of time to flip through every single card and find the cards that you've listed on these selling platforms. Now it's as simple as I see the set and I see the card name, I'm going to go find it in the boxes. Now Excel also does this automatically for TCG Player, but something that I had to deal with in the past when I didn't have the pricing sheet was if you have Grookey number 10 from Sword and Shield base set and Grookey number 11 from Sword and Shield base set, you might forget to put them in the right order. For me, I like to put the cards that have the lower numerical set number before the cards that have the higher numerical set number. And for conditions, I usually go near mint, lightly played, moderately played, heavily played in that order going backwards. So if the near mint cards I'll put at the front, the lightly played cards I'll put in the back. And another thing that helps to distinguish between a near mint card and a lightly played card, because they are pretty subjective, sometimes if I list the cards, I'll completely forget what the condition was that I listed the cards when I go to then sell the cards. If the card is of high enough value, I will take a sleeve, I will put the card in a sleeve, and I will use a Sharpie to distinguish near mint by NM, lightly played by LP, moderately played by MP, or heavily played by HP. So those are a few of the things that I do. Now, some of the supplies that we were talking about earlier, if you've ever used a BCW 5000 count box, and maybe you are listing a set like Generations, where there's only a few cards in the set, it's not going to take up a whole ton of space. These cards can just start to slide around, and if you've ever looked at how you actually pick cards and the stuff just keeps falling backwards, it can get super annoying and it can damage the cards altogether. So this is where these monster pads come in, and in a previous video I mentioned you could also use pool noodles if you want to get a little crafty and save some money. But the monster pads are great because they essentially are like a foam wall that prevents the cards from falling backwards, and it's really great for storing inventory purposes. Again, you want to make sure that you're establishing a conditioning system, that way you know where things are at all times. The whole point of this video is to make sure that you're doing the due diligence, to make sure that you've done all this stuff and make it very granular so that when you sell a card you know exactly where it is and there's no problem. Now, as I mentioned, on these index cards you can write the letters of the alphabet. You can also add the set name. That way, if maybe you're not as familiar with Pokemon as me, for me it's very easy. I just know like set names and acronyms and all that stuff very easily. But if this is more of a new world to you, it might be beneficial to write out not only the letter of the alphabet but also the set name on the index card, and that way you'll have an easier time finding stuff as well. You can also label the BCW boxes by row with the set. If you can see behind me, there are white labels on each of the rows that distinguish the sets. And then one other thing that's really important, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this video, since I've been doing this for so long, it's very common to just like get stacks of inventory laying around just like this, right? Like this is not, this little area right here is not a shelf. And it's important at the end of the year, especially for taxes, or maybe quarterly, depending on how you're filing, or monthly, especially if you have smaller inventory. It's a lot easier to do this. Once you have a large inventory, it's a lot harder. But make sure that you're auditing your inventory on some sort of cadence. It's important to know where cards are at all times. You want to make sure that the inventory that you have listed on these sites matches the inventory that you say you have, and stuff like that. So now that we've gotten to close to the end of the video, I'm going to show you the tour of the behind me. All right, well, I wish I knew how to do some cool transition, but let's go ahead and take a tour of the behind the scenes. So this is the shelves that you guys are very accustomed to seeing in the backgrounds of the videos, and let's go ahead and take a look. So far I've listed pretty much everything from these boxes back to these boxes, and this is how you want to set it up. So we have the BCW tall dividers with the Sharpied A on it, B, C, D. So if you needed a Driftblim from Steam Siege or whatever, a Dino, there it is. All this stuff isn't completely sorted, but this is essentially what you want to get it to. And these are the BCW monster pads that are preventing, this should be Generations cards from falling behind, right? So now if you come in here and you pick your inventory, it's not going to slide all the way backwards, where something like this, for example, boom, just slides all the way back. So this is kind of the idea. Some of these labels aren't quite fixed up. I've been doing a lot of movement, and these haven't quite got the Sharpied index cards on them, but these are all listed sets. So like Ultra Prism, if I needed a Araquanid, it's right there. And if we were to go to the back, you could find Young Goose. So there's all sorts of stuff right there. Now, these are all the sets that I haven't listed quite yet, and ideally they will start to look like that stuff over there. And as you can see, we have all this inventory sorted, but what happens when it comes time to ship? Well, we're going to come over here, and I like to keep everything in one location. So we have bubble mailers, and we have envelopes in these drawers right here. And then we have stuff like top loaders, cardboard sleeves, regular sleeves, all that stuff right there, so that it's really easy to list and ship stuff. Now, this is the BCW modular sorting tray that I was talking about. When you're sorting your cards, this thing is super helpful. As you can see, I've Sharpied A here, B here, C, and this is really helpful for being able to sort all the cards all at once, instead of having just a tabletop to put A right here, maybe B right here. So these are some of the really great parts. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little tour of the background, and let's get back to the video. So that's the tour of the Lab TCG. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you're wondering how you can actually ship all these cards once you've listed and sold them, you're going to want to check out this video where I break down step by step in a long video how to do everything related to shipping. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.